Hi, Danielle. How you doing?
Hey, Corey, we're going to share our collective trauma over mail-in ballots from 2009. I can hardly wait to talk it through with you. I mean, that experience single-handedly made me opposed to mail-in ballots. And so I was a bit surprised to see the UCP party embracing them because, my goodness, do you ever end up with a lot of problems there?
Yeah, and I'll give a quick background on that. So this is going all the way back to when Danielle won the leadership of the Wild Rose Party. At that time, I think I was VP policy with the party on the executive, and my wife Jane was the executive director. And we had, I think, about 11,000 members,
Mhm.
perhaps. I can't remember who were eligible. So we did a mail-in balloting system, and 8,000 of those voted. And the amount of work, and we had months to get ready for this, and still the logistics of getting that many ballots out, uniquely numbered, ensuring that there wasn't fraud, getting them all back, getting them counted, it was a nightmare. And a lot of people raised a lot of questions about the whole thing. It was on the up and up, but boy, what a mess. And that's a fraction of what the UCP is looking to pull off right now.
You're totally right, and I'll just elaborate on that a little bit, and you can probably tell me from your perspective what you remember. But one of the things that I remember being a real problem is that a lot of especially rural addresses, your actual physical address is different than your mailing address. Most folks in rural have a PO box within one of the towns or close by in the city, and so you can end up with a problem of getting the ballot out to a person who wants to vote. That's number one. The second part of the problem is getting that turnaround. And so you get the ballot, then you have to turn around, put it in the mail, and hope that it actually gets there. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the third one is that if you don't receive it in time, how do you make sure that you get it returned in time? And I recall a couple of my supporters, because we allowed for there to be a single ballot box in Edmonton because we wanted members to be there to either vote on site or have their ballots sent in. So I remember I had supporters who were driving around picking up ballots so they could drive them up to Edmonton to get there in time. And then finally, you'll recall this too, when we talk about the PTSD afterwards, there's always a trickle that come in after the voting date because they get lost in the mail, they turn up all crumpled because clearly they got shoved in behind some storage center in a mail room. And then you're constantly worried that is the follow-up ballots coming in, are they going to change the outcome? And you always have people questioning, did my vote get counted? And so people feel disenfranchised. The other candidates who are in the race feel like they're suspicious, or they raise suspicions about the outcome and whether you can trust it. It seems to me like all of those experiences that just affirmed for me that the only way that you can have integrity in a voting process that is fair to the candidates, that's fair to the members, that everyone feels like it's on the up and up, is for it to be in person. And that to me is it should have been the conclusion when they started seeing all the SGM registrations, the special general meeting registrations. They have well over $1 million. You could very easily decide that you're going to have in-person ballot stations, if maybe not at all 87 constituencies, but at all of the major centers. You could have one in Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie, Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat. Probably need one in Lloydminster as well. I just was in Lloydminster. It's about a 6-hour round trip to get to where I live. So you could put a polling station in the major centers. You have the money to be able to man it and rent the room. And then you could do an in-person ballot, and that would address the issue of the number of people who need to be accommodated. But I just cannot. I'm trying to wrap my head around how they're going to get the ballots printed, mailed out, and turned around by May 18th, I think is the date that they're talking about, having not had the experience of doing this before. Like maybe they'll need to second Jane and you to give them some advice, Corey, because you guys went through it and know what
Advice,
the problems are.
ballots at all. So I don't think they want to hear from us. Uh, But I mean, we did see that. I mean, everything has backfired on them. They truly underestimated how many people were going to sign up. They thought if we're going to make it $100 a crack and make everybody come out in person, we'll have maybe a couple thousand participants, and we can really control that. And we can see that absolutely it was going to be a catastrophe if they tried to get 15,000 people to vote in Red Deer at a hotel over a 6-hour period. So they had to do something. But now to defer it, I mean, the other part in deferring it to May He keeps kicking that can down the road. And I'm sure what they're going to say is, well, this is too late now to change leaders because we got an election less than a year from now. We need to go into a leadership race and bring somebody else in. We're seeing a lot of ugly political play, and I really think the party's losing a lot of credibility right now.
Well, and that's the real problem is that if you want to go through, if the whole purpose of this is to have the members cast a say on whether they want, whether they, the actual question on a leadership review ballot is, do you approve of the current leader? Yes or no? And the reason why you do that is you want to have a lot of enthusiasm and support demonstrated for your current leader, because that then helps to build the momentum, especially if you're going into an election year. If there's nothing but concern and it's fraught and there's worry and there's people casting doubt on whether the outcome is what they announce, then that's going to have the exact opposite effect. It's going to backfire. And so there is a potential of losing the war after you've won the battle. And I think that that's the concern that the party should have, is that, sure, I suppose you could end up doing whatever it is you want, get the outcome, but the integrity of the process is important to get the buy-in. The whole reason you want to do this is because election planning for a political party has to begin very shortly after this. The premier has set May of 2023 as the fixed election date. We used to have a fixed election window. A few weeks ago, he announced that it was going to be a fixed election date in May. So everybody knows what date they're working towards. But if you end up with a party questioning the outcome, feeling like they haven't had a proper say, feeling like they can't trust the executive, that's not going to bring people together to elect their candidates, to start volunteering, to do the door knocking, to make the phone calls. And that's the army that you need if you're going to go into an election united. That's my greatest fear, is that if you don't handle this process badly, you can create a bunch of unnecessary bad feelings. So you're better off just trying to find a process that everybody feels has integrity, and then you accept the result. If the premier gets a resounding yes, then that is accepted. Everybody can come together and move on. If it's a resounding no, then there's a leadership race that other people can jump into. But to create this uncertainty, I think they're going to get the worst of all worlds out of it.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, Premier Kenney was asked about it, what level would be, where he would feel comfortable staying in. I mean, in a leadership review, usually it's kind of open and shut. There'd be 80%, 90%. He said 50% plus one would be enough. But, if it comes in at 60%, I fear that party is going to rip itself to shreds. We already have members of the legislature. Jason Steffen came out today and has outright demanded Kenney's resignation. A number of them are getting more and more bold and showing their discontent. And I don't think they're going to feel settled after a race unless it was an incredible blowout of support for the premier.
Well, and the premier could have the confidence that even in a race that he would be able to win it. I mean, he's a formidable campaigner, and his record hasn't been all bad. When you look at the economy and the amount of investment coming into the province, this is all very positive. I think where he got into trouble, obviously, was the back and forth on his COVID policy, saying we're definitely not going to have vaccine passports, and then turning around and having vaccine mandates, as well as this restriction exemption program. That alienated a lot of people. But I think he was facing trouble before that because of the Alberta Agenda, a series of events that took place around the province. Drew Barnes obviously was one of the most vocal voices there, and there was a pretty strong mandate to start moving and getting tougher with Ottawa. There was a very strong mandate from the people on the equalization referendum as well to start the process of ending equalization in the Constitution. And I think the fact that he has not challenged Ottawa and not stepped forward on those, that's a bigger problem for him. But you know what? He could have said, the amount of outpouring of membership support, shouldn't maybe put it that way, membership purchases, and the number of people who want to participate in that process, that shows me that there's a question that people want answered. Therefore, we're going to go automatically into a leadership review or leadership vote. I'm going to be on the ballot. I'll take any comers. I'm going to stand up for my record and I'm going to win. He could very easily do that. I think that would actually be a bit more reflective of what it is that members want to see. They want to have a robust race. He still has certainly a large share of support from his existing members. Is it enough to defeat Rachel Notley in the next election? That's the question. That's why everybody's having that discussion. And if you keep on pushing things down the road and you don't get started on what looks to me almost an inevitability that there should be some kind of leadership contest, then do you really want to go into the election saying, well, we got to stay with who we've got because we've now run out of time to have that question? Now you've alienated riding presidents who've been asking for this early. You put questions into the judgment of the executive committee of the party, and people are going to be questioning whether or not they have the interests of members at heart. It's a really messy situation for everyone. And so I think the premier really could resolve all of this. He obviously has a kick in his step again. He's feeling very upbeat. He's feeling very happy about the turnaround, and he may well be able to make the argument that he does deserve to have another mandate to go into the next election. But you're not going to have Brian Jean just decide to stand down. He has to deal with the reality that Brian Jean wants to have another chance to take another stab at this. And so if that doesn't get accommodated somehow, now you're looking at, once again, seeing the party split apart, the movement split apart. And if you end up with two parties, you end up with a Brian Jean, who also has proven electoral success. He won 21 seats in 2015 up against Jason Kenney. Now you've split the vote at least two ways. You've got Paul Hinman as well, who is polling at least with 10 to 15% of the support for his Wild Rose Party, Wild Rose Independence Party. When you start seeing that amount of vote divide, because this is an unanswered question and people see the process to be unfair, I don't know how you can keep all of that together as a cohesive movement to be able to defeat Rachel Notley in 2023. So I think it's the ball's now really in the premier's court to try to suggest a different pathway forward. And my suggestion would be that he should just say, look, I've heard this is what people want. They want my leadership to be contested, and I'm quite happy to enter into a race because I think I'm the best candidate. I don't know why he doesn't do that. And then it would just affirm his leadership so that he has the strength going into the next election. Or if he's wrong, then people will have an opportunity to put that forward too.
Yeah, that would be a way to go, because he seems to be quite backed into a corner. I mean, a lot of the speculation was moving to this system of a delegated leadership was to favor the premier, and it turns out, obviously, clearly they didn't feel comfortable feeling it was going to favor him as well, so they've moved to mail-in, even though they said recently that was a terrible way to go. But that's no guarantee that he's going to do well out of this either.
Mhm.
Then, I mean, it's the same number of people are going to be discontent potentially, so this may end really poorly. But I almost fear the worst outcome would be a slim win for Premier Kenney.
I think you're right, because here's the unfortunate part of it is that you already have people questioning it. Well, is March 19th going to be the real cutoff, or are they still selling memberships and not telling anyone? When you have people talking that way and creating that kind of distrust in the process, it's really, really hard to come back from that. There is also another concern, and I don't know the answer to this, but I heard Zane Novak on Rob Breckenridge's show yesterday, and he was saying, what if they allow for membership sales after April the 1st, because that's when the new legislation comes through that allows for people to buy 400 memberships without the knowledge of an individual. So you could have an organization sign up 400 of their members and presumably order mail-in ballots and vote on their behalf. That's sort of the other rumor mill that's out there. Is there going to be some kind of shenanigans around the ordering and signing up of members without their knowledge? We also saw the CBC report yesterday that shows that you've got a testimony that Premier Kenney was involved in the discussion of running Jeff Callaway as a so-called kamikaze candidate for the sole purpose of ruining Brian Jean's chances. So all of this is swirling about, and the best way to sweep away some of these kinds of concerns is to have an open, fair, robust process. Make sure that you bring in the auditors so that there is integrity to the process, that no one can question the outcome. Have in-person votes so people can put their paper ballot into a box with their own eyes and their own hands and feel confident that it's going to be counted. That to me, at this stage, with all of the pushback, anxiety, rumors, distrust, if this is supposed to be about bringing a party together, they've got to take a different approach.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be something to watch with interest. I've never been more happy not to have a party membership any longer than I have been this last couple of months. I'm glad I'm not on their executive trying to figure out how they're going to deal with this. As you said, we've been through it on a smaller scale before, and that's challenging enough.
No kidding, because I think this one, as I understand it, this is what the difference is it's not just the people who signed up for that $99 special general meeting registration. Now I think it's all members. So last I heard, there was some suggestion that it would be 43,000 votes. And so, wow, like just wrap your head around that for a minute about all of the printing and the labeling and the putting it in the mail and having it turned around 43, and then the counting when it comes back in, all through the course of the 6 weeks to follow. Boy, I don't know if they realize what they've signed themselves up for with the mail-in ballot. It's not an easy process to do, especially for a party that often operates on a bit of a skeleton crew. So I think we're all watching it with interest and seeing whether they're going to shift gears. There's a lot of pushback. I gather there's some MLAs as well as some riding presidents who are holding a press conference this afternoon. I don't know if they're going to be asking for a change in process or if they're going to be asking for the same thing that Jason Steffen is. But there's just no point in creating this kind of angst on something that is supposed to be a uniting effort for a political party. That's the thing that we forget, is that political parties are supposed to be at this stage trying to come together around the leader so that they can choose their candidates and the team that's going to get them into the next election. Having this unsettled issue just gives his opponents in the NDP party the advantage. They're totally unified around their leader. In fact, I don't even know if I've ever heard of a leadership challenge to Rachel Notley, even though she went from being premier to being opposition leader again. They are steadily going along and lining up their candidates, some high profile ones like Drew Farrell in Calgary as well. So the longer this remains unsettled and the more infighting that there is, it just ends up impairing the party's ability to get ready for May of 2023. And that's what they need to get resolved. They need to get the leadership issue behind them quickly. And then they need to move on to doing the candidate selection so that they're ready for what happens a year from now. Otherwise, that's going to be a bigger problem for everyone.
Yeah, the only one smiling right now from ear to ear has got to be Rachel Notley at this point. I mean, just kick back and let them deal with themselves, and she can, show stability, to voters versus a party racked with infighting. Well, we'll see.
Can I just say one more thing on that, Corey? It's so funny because I remember when I was sitting in the legislature with Rob Anderson and Heather Forrest, I think Guy Boudelier and the others, when we saw that Alison Redford was really on the ropes, it was, oh no, we want to actually face her in the next election. We better cool it. And in point of fact, it was already too late for her, and we ended up facing a more formidable challenger in Jim Prentice, and we all know how that one ended up. But that's got to be what's happening with Rachel Notley as well, as she's probably, because she hasn't said too much when you think about it. She's probably in that frame of mind that when she looks at who she would rather be facing in the debates and who she'd be rather facing in the election, knowing that the premier is fighting off his own party, she's probably thinking this is the perfect contender, that she probably wants to keep Jason Kenney there, which is why she's just biding her time while the infighting does her work. So you're right, talking about grinning ear to ear. This does nothing but help her in her re-election bid.
Yeah, well, we'll be watching with morbid interest as the party tries to figure out what rules they're going to release, and they better get on it soon because now everybody's speculating, which makes it even worse and adds to the mistrust. So thank you very much for coming on to join me today. And